The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein, and I'm here every Friday at 3 o'clock. And if you miss my show, you can always catch me on Spotify or Apple, and or my website at themainstreetcode.com, and you can hear what we're all about. So when we talk about our code, we talk about choice, organization, direction, and education. And we help hundreds of advisors across the United States with their insurance needs. We have attorneys, CPAs that have insurance issues, whether it's life insurance, disability, long-term care, annuities. That's what we specialize in. And when you're working with professionals, any professional in this insurance world, it's not just about insurance. Okay, it's not just about product. Who has a better product? Who has a better this? It's more about the plan. The plan is the key. And integrating the insurance products in the plan is what we do best, but also we help you formulate a plan. So one of the big topics of conversation today is the silver tsunami. I don't know if you ever heard that expression, the silver tsunami. The silver tsunami represents all the baby boomers in the next 5 years turning age 70, which is 70 and older. The baby boomer generation is now the silver tsunami. This is a big, big impact on the economy, on all of our lives, as you know, everybody getting older. And we like to talk about the plan. What is the plan? I had a recent conversation with a woman who, she was probably in her 50s. I don't know exactly. Actually, when I was in Albany, it was a woman that worked with a senator. And she said, you know, we were talking about insurance issues, but she said, you know, her husband had passed away unexpectedly and had no insurance. And she has 3 children that are now in their 20s. And she has some insurance, and she's made some plans. And I asked her one question, which I guess took everybody by surprise. There was a bunch of people in the room, and I said, so which one of your children is going to come home and take care of you, you know, if you fall, or if you need, you know, you need help in the restroom, or whatever? I mean, which one? And of course, she looked at me like, well, you know, I can't tell you that. I mean, I'd love for my daughter to come home and take care of me, but, you know, your daughter's starting out her life and she's in college, and maybe that's not her wishes. And that's the biggest thing today, is that at some point, especially if you're alone or even with a husband or a wife, is what's the plan? Who's going to change their life to take care of you? That's so important, a thought process. And even the best people that have done great planning, have made money, have investments, they've bought long-term care insurance, they've done all the right things, they still don't have a plan. So they don't have a what-if plan if this happens and that happens, and things do happen. And we talk a lot about long-term care insurance because we have a very big situation today. And the situation is this, that because we're we have an aging population, but we don't have a plan from a universal standpoint on how to take care of us. Right now, over 70% of people reaching age 70 will need some sort of care. Actually, after the age of 65, typical retirement age, 70% of us will need some sort of care. But the real issue is that caregiver. Now, if you're relying on a spouse to be your caregiver, what kind of impact does that have on their life when they have to turn around and take care of you? First off, it's a big financial impact, and it's an emotional impact. Financially, think about this. You've done well financially, and you've saved up money, and that's great. And all of a sudden, and maybe your spouse is working as well, and they're doing great, okay? And everything's wonderful. You pay your bills, you have savings, you've got the American dream, you own your house, everything's wonderful. All of a sudden, one of you has an incident where they fall down the stairs, or they break a hip, or or they're going to be sustained at home. They have cancer, whatever it is, okay? Now, and the biggest issue is memory loss, Alzheimer's. Half the claims are due to this. So all of a sudden, okay, you have money, your spouse is going to stay home and take care of you. Okay, now your spouse or your child, in many situations, if you don't have a partner or a significant other, may decide, okay, I'm going to take care of you. Now, what if they have a job? What if they have children? How does that impact their lives? How does that impact them financially? Not only are you going to go through assets, well, then you're going to have to hire somebody. Now, go to hire somebody. We have a big problem hiring people that have qualifications. We have a big problem with child care helpers and, adult workers, or if you have autism, and, we don't have enough skilled help to help us, especially if we have cognitive issues. So there's a big cost factor if you want the right help. Now, insurance policies will help take care of that. And I like to relate to my family. In the past, I've talked about radio shows about my father, and I haven't really focused on my mother and my grandmother. But let me just tell you what happened in my family. And listen, every family has a story. Without question, everybody's impacted by this. Everybody has a long-term care story. Well, here's my basic story. My grandmother was in Russia, what's actually Ukraine. We were always told it was Russia, but it was actually Ukraine. She came over here as a teenager. She would tell us stories about the Bolsheviks and this and that. She was born in 1898, came in here in the early 1900s. If she had lived 3 more years, she would have lived in 3 centuries. Crazy. Up until the age of 94, she lived in Baltimore. Her husband had died, and she had her own home. She actually ran a restaurant. She ran a deli restaurant in Baltimore. And up until the age of 94, she ran her own home and even rented half her home to somebody else and could take care of herself. She started to fade a little bit, needing she didn't drive anymore, and she needed something to help her walk. She had like a walking stick kind of deal. Other than that, pretty good health. One day, she had this basement in her house. It was a scary basement, very dark. She opened the door and she slipped and she fell down the stairs. And I'm going to tell you about the will of a powerful woman, okay? She climbed up the stairs with her elbows and fingernails. She had 2 broken hips, but had the ability to climb up the stairs at 94 with her elbows and fingernails, and got to the top of the stairs and crawled over to near where the phone is, took her cane, knocked the phone off the hook, and called my mother. So at that point, she had to be, taken to the hospital, and she went in rehabilitation, and she had to move out of her house because the broken hips the rest of her life started to kind of deteriorate. So they put her in an area of a place that had assisted living, it had nursing care, it had all three areas of care. This was back in the 90s, or late 80s, 90s, and that was a good solution for her. But my mother had another issue, and I want to talk about the relationship between my mother and my grandmother. And we're running out of time. I mean, we're getting ready for commercial break, but very importantly, my mother spoke to her mother every day of her life, including her honeymoon, by the way. And I want to talk about that relationship a little bit more right after a break. Where you're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. My name is Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694. Thank you. I'll be talking to you in a few minutes. themainstreetcode.com. If you want to reach out to my website, please give me a call if you have any questions. We'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. Again, I can be reached at 631-647-4694. And if you would listen to me before the break, I was talking about my grandmother, who lived to the ripe old age of 98. She was born in 1898, and I always told her she lived a couple more years. She would have lived in 3 centuries. I mean, this woman saw the first airplane, the first car, the first computer. What in that 100 years she almost lived, look at all the advancements and everything else. Anyhow, my grandmother had an incident where she fell down her steps at 94, had her own house, and had to be taken away by emergency to a hospital where she had 2 broken hips. And my mother had this incredible relationship. She spoke to her mother every day of her life. My mom at that point was, I guess, in her 70s. And, she was called when my grandmother fell, and they took her to a facility, and then she ended up moving all her furniture there and selling the house she lived in, which she had for her whole life. Grandmother was a very strong person. Now, my mom was going through her own situation. My mom was perfectly healthy, but my dad had disintegrated discs in his neck and back. And my dad, tremendous athlete, played tennis every day up until he was about 60. Every day. Great shape. Was a veterinarian, financially did well. But over time, his neck and back disintegrated to the point where he was wheelchair bound and ambulatory. My mom one day, my dad was taking a bath, and he couldn't get out of the tub. This is a big problem. So my mom was not able to get him out of the tub, so naturally her reaction was call 911. They came by in about an hour, 2 hours time while my dad sat in the tub. Of course, he got her some towels and everything, but pretty much naked in a tub where they had to lift him out of the tub. And about 2 weeks later, happened again. This time, they waited 2 or 3 hours to come to pick my father up out of the tub. This was not a great plan. Eventually, what happened is my father ended up being wheelchair bound. My mother ended up my father bought one of those vans that are wheelchair accessible. My mom was his caregiver. My mom was his driver. My mom fed him. My mom cleaned the house. Yes, she had a maid once or twice a week, but she was caregiving for my dad. My mom died before my dad. I think because of all the stress of taking care of him. But if you recall, at the beginning of this conversation, her mother, who she spoke to every day, was in a nursing home. She couldn't deal with her mother. She was in assisted living. So here was just tremendous emotional stress. And now my mother couldn't leave the house because she had to take care of my father 24/7. And when they did go out and they drove this van started to look like a trash can on both sides because my mom was hitting all the curbs and And luckily, she never hit anybody else, to the point where we had to take the car away from my mom. That was a very tough conversation for me. It took away her freedom. And it ended up taking away what she thought was all her freedom, and to the point where she got sick and she passed away. And then my dad lived on by himself, having home caregivers come in, who were not home caregivers. They were home service people that were doing his house cleaning that he converted into his home care help. They couldn't monitor his medication or anything else. And quite frankly, when they weren't taking care of him, he was concerned they weren't cleaning the house. It was kind of a horrible situation, but the one he wanted to live. That was their long-term plan. There was no long-term care insurance at that time. So, and they were past the availability to get it. Today, because of this increasing need, and now the situation has gotten much, much, much worse. And the insurance companies are feeling it. The government is feeling it. Because if you need home care services, or you need to go to the bad house, or if you have assisted living, it costs a lot of money. Or you have to impoverish yourself, and Medicaid comes in. And that's why all these estate attorneys or elder law attorneys do what they call Medicaid planning or elder care planning. All it's involved is getting rid of your assets and putting you in a position so that you can get government help and government assistance. That's what Medicaid planning is. It's planning to be poor. Sorry, I get in arguments with attorneys all the time. They do this with wealthy people. They plan them to be poor so they can have government services. Well, the government is the number one supplier of long-term care insurance in the country. It is the biggest issue for the government. It is the biggest thing for state and federal budgets is Medicaid. And why? Because Medicaid is for those services, not Medicare. Medicare is for your health insurance. It's care for our senior citizens. Now, because of all the medical improvements that we have, you used to have a heart attack and the next day you were dead. Today you have a heart attack, you're in and out of the hospital in one day. I mean, they blow you up with, they do angiograms, they do this. They can extend your life for 10, 20, 30 years. Used to be you had a heart attack, that's it, you're dead. Okay? There's still an incident. Diabetes, they know how to treat it now. So that you can live on and take care of things. Alzheimer's, still a big issue. 14 years is the average mental thing of Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's and mental conditions could start at any age. It's not just the elderly. There's many early onset of Alzheimer's in your 50s. And how do you deal with that? If the two of you are still making a living or not making a living, how does the wife stay home to take care of the husband? How does the husband stay home and take care of the wife and still run a business or have an active lifestyle? Or the child that has to come home from college, is that fair to them? You want your independence. So how do we help plan for this? Well, you have to make a plan for this, whether it's financially with an attorney to rely on Medicaid or buy some sort of insurance. Now, long-term care insurance comes in many forms. It used to be just a standalone product that they came out with about 30 years ago. The problem was they didn't price it right. They didn't realize how long people would be on services. They didn't anticipate this. So a lot of insurance companies went out of business. Some that remained, there's only a couple that are still in this, what we call standalone long-term care business, because they didn't price it right. They thought these policies would lapse. They thought they would only needed for 2 or 3 years. At the time, it was a 50% chance that you'd ever need it. Now it's a 70% chance. Look at the difference in the numbers. It's just astounding. The amount of time that a care, so if you don't have a plan, so insurance is a great option. So the insurance industry couldn't stand it alone. The government is looking for solutions. The government is Some of the states have come out with mandatory purchase of long-term care insurance, and they take out another tax. New York was looking at this last year. This year, they're constantly looking for ways of taxing you so that we can take care of this. But that's not a solution. So there's standalone long-term care policies, and then there's what we call hybrid long-term care policies, which are really combinations of life insurance and long-term care. So if you don't need it, at least you have a life insurance plan that'll take care of the other person and maybe take care of some of those assets you might have to go through, or not. At least there are additional assets for the surviving spouse or children that they can live their lives. That's why these hybrid plans have become so big. They're a combination of life insurance and long-term care. It's a great savings vehicle to have both and have it in one product. That's why we're seeing a lot of activity in that area in this hybrid long-term care space. It's so important that you have a plan, whether it's insurance or financial with an attorney or a combination. We certainly recommend that you do your planning and do it early, not after the emergency happens. You know, you can't get car insurance after you had a major car accident. You can't get fire insurance after your house is on fire. The likelihood that you're going to need this is nearly 100% at this point. 70% are the odds. The other 30% are going to have to take care of the other 70%. So 100% of you are affected. I urge you to get yourself covered and to speak to us at Main Street Planning Group. If you need to reach out to me, I'm at 631-647-4694. My name is Neil Himmelstein, and you've been listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.